morning, everybody. Happy Monday to you. Melissa Nielsen with Waldorf Essentials. Today I'm going to talk about Waldorf Pure. What does that mean exactly, and why do people get hung up on it, and why is it important to talk about that? And so I thought I would start with a couple of different things. So when you come to Waldorf and it's this big, huge thing, and so it feels like really overwhelming. So I'll get emails every now and again that will say, I'm interested in Waldorf, really just interested in the art portions of it. And I go, okay, well then let's not call what you're doing Waldorf. Let's say that you are adopting Waldorf art into your homeschooling. Or I'll get emails that'll say, I really just want to work on form drawing and adopt that. And I go, okay, well, let's not call that Waldorf then. Let's say that you're adopting form drawing as a pre-writing or as a writing skill. Because when we're talking about doing Waldorf education, there are some tenets to that are very specific. And so I want to give you sort of the vernacular in order to utilize those tenets properly. And this is especially good morning, Luce, if you are brand new. So Waldorf education is age-appropriate material at the right time. Steiner laid out this developmental timeline that is absolutely amazing, and it has different things at different times. Fairy tales for the first graders and why they meet them there. Fables, saints, stories for the second graders. Old Testament stories for third graders. It's the curriculum is laid out in a way that it meets the child for their age. So there's two pieces to that. You don't just know what the curriculum is, you have to make sure your child is properly placed. So when I think of what is Waldorf Pure, when somebody says to me, well, I don't do Waldorf Pure, and I go, well, all right, well, let's talk about what that word means to you. Because to me, if you are doing age-appropriate material at the right time, then you're doing Waldorf. And it doesn't matter whatever else is going on in your life. It doesn't matter if you have more TV than your other Waldorf neighbor does, or if you're, do some gaming that your other Waldorf neighbor doesn't do. All of those things don't matter to me as much as let's talk about how you're implementing the curriculum within your homeschool. That is the most important part of what is Waldorf Pure. Are you protecting that young childhood space? So yes, of course you couldn't have the TV on 24/7 and be able to protect that space. Of course you wouldn't be able to have unlimited gaming and be able to protect that space, because part of that is, protecting that and understanding those 7-year cycles. So when I think of Waldorf Pure, those are the pieces that I think about. I don't think about the toys. I don't think about where you choose to take your vacation, like if you choose to go to Disneyland. Don't think about what movies you choose to watch, let your kids watch, as long as you're not letting them watch, stuff that's not appropriate. I don't think about those pieces when it comes to Waldorf Pure. A lot of people do, though, and a lot of people get really hung up on it, and to a place where it's really inappropriate, because I do think that one of the things that Steiner would say, and he actually says this in one of his lectures, and I think it's Kingdom of Childhood, where he says, I'm handing you these foundation pieces, but I expect that you're going to teach first grade a little bit different than you're going to teach first grade. And then if I went into your classroom, it would look different than your classroom, because I want you to take what I'm giving you and interpret it appropriately for your classroom. And so yes, there are going to be things that look the same. Of course you're going to have letter introduction that's mostly the same. You're going to have drawing and painting that's mostly the same, but you're going to have differences within homes or within classrooms that should be individual to the teacher. They should not be cookie cutter. So when people say to me, especially like with regards to our curriculum, I really want you to have a drawing for every single lesson. And I say, well, then that inhibits, when I do that, because I have a drawing for a lot of lessons, if I give you a drawing for every single one, that inhibits your opportunity to grow and really understand the curriculum and work on your skills, work on your art skills, because that's part of this. So, I love, there's a piece in the front of Rhythms of Learning where the the person who wrote the foreword, whose name is escaping me right now, he says that Waldorf education is as much for the teachers as it is for the students. Yes, it is. Very much so. And so if you allow yourself to sort of take that in, then you can start to really learn and understand. So when people talk to me about what is Waldorf Pure, those are the pieces, those basic tenets are the pieces that are Waldorf Pure to me. Now, you might ask some of people that are our competitors or people that that think that Melissa's a little off a rocker what Waldorf Pure is, and they would go whole hog and talk about a whole lot of other things. But really and truly, if you get to the heart of what Steiner talked about, those are the pieces. So I think that you can do a lot within that. A lot within that. I don't think that you can say that you 100% unschool and then do Waldorf, because they're not 100% compatible. And the reason being is unschooling is child-led and Waldorf is development-led. So you have to really understand the two differences. And we've done a couple of blog posts about that. So if you're coming to this from more of an unschooling background, please look at those. That doesn't mean that you can't have unschooling moments, unschooling times within the Waldorf curriculum. For sure you can. I think it's really about giving them what's appropriate, what is appropriate for their age group. Like, you wouldn't hand them a quantum physics book and go, here you go, when they're in third grade, have a good time unschooling. But you might take them to, say, a museum and leave them open-ended and allow them to go and explore, even if it wasn't within their age group. And so those are ways that you can utilize unschooling in a Waldorf situation. So I'll have parents that are, parents that have really been working to follow the curriculum, and they'll be like sending me emails. I am really stressed out, frazzled right now. My planning is not exactly where I wanted it to be, and I am really trying to figure out what to do, and unschooling sounds so appealing to me. So I ask, what is appealing to you about it right now? Is it appealing to you because you didn't get your planning in a good place and you really wanted to, and so you're really trying to find a Band-Aid, trying to figure it out? Because if that's the case, then let's do that. Let's take a month and go to a different museum every week, go spend a lot of time in nature, and allow that unschooly space. But you're still having that developmentally led area in your house. You're still utilizing developmentally led situations. You're not just tossing them off. You're also not saying, you can just turn off the TV when you want, because you can just leave it on all the time. Because one of the things we talk about in Waldorf is protecting childhood, and how television and unlimited gaming is not, it's not appropriate for children and their brain development. And that's not just Waldorf. I mean, there's so much out there right now that talks about the sanctity of childhood and how TV and media is really sort of taking that away. So that's not just a Waldorf thing. But one of the things I will say is you want to be careful about how you bring that out to your kids. I taught a conference. I taught at a conference a few years ago. Actually, this was several years ago. This was probably about 10 years ago. And one of the moms in the room, she just started crying. And I was like, what's wrong? And because we sort of had this conversation about media. And she said that then her kids had gone, we were at a Waldorf school for this conference, and her kids had gone to the school. And she said that, and her daughter was in third grade, had never seen a movie, never had a TV in her home, never had anything artificial, nothing. And she went to a friend's house and came home bawling because they watched TV and they had a TV over there and they were listening to all this music. And the little girl was just distraught because she knew that it was wrong. And so not that they were watching it constantly, but that they had a TV in their home. And so this mom was like, I messed up. And I said, yeah, you have to step back and go, those are choices that people make. Our choice might be to not have a television. My choice is to have a television. If you could see the big thing that is behind this camera. It doesn't get on that much, but we have a big TV. That's not my purchase. I mean, I okayed that purchase, but that's because that's what my husband liked. So And I know a lot of other moms are in that same space. So guess what? This isn't my regular living space. This is where we come to enjoy that. And we have some office space down here, but we live upstairs. And so when I talk to people about where should I put my TV, I go, well, if you can get away with it, don't put it in the front room. Put it someplace where you have to go to that space to enjoy it, so then you can shut the door when you're not there and it's not a huge distraction to you. So that's how you utilize sort of having that in a space that's not like all consuming, because otherwise it could be all consuming. TVs are giant today and they can take up an entire wall. And so I really just wanted to be able to have a serene space when you first come into our home and where our children spend most of their time, rather than having that be part of the distraction. So if that's part of a struggle that you're having, think about that. Brainstorm with your husband. Where can I put this? Where can we put this so that we feel like it is, sort of deciding what's this space about. This space might be about more relaxing and watching TV and having fun that way, where this space over here is more about, reading and having a serene feeling and those sorts of things. So think about the way your house is laid out. And anyway, I know that I just got off of the Waldorf Pure topic, but so when it comes to this purity thing, I want you to sort of settle down a bit. It is not about eating quinoa every day. It's not about, making sure you got 4 different kinds of kale. It's not about anything like that. It has nothing to do with how you eat. Yes, it can have something to do with how you eat, but at its core, at its base, it doesn't have to have anything to do with what you eat. It doesn't have to have anything to do with, I got to follow the days of the cycles of the planets. You don't have to do any of that. You do that as a way to mark your rhythm. Those are the reasons why we do some of those things in Waldorf, but you don't have to do those things. So when, like we run, I'm a moderator on a big, or an admin on a big Waldorf group, Homeschooling Waldorf Support. And one of the rules is we're gonna give you Waldorf-centered answers. So if you give us a post and 10 people post stuff that has nothing to do with Waldorf, and we come in there and we say this is the Waldorf answer, and people start arguing with us, then we shut those people down, because guess what? It's a Waldorf group. If you want conversation about unschooling, you should do that in an unschooling group. If you want conversation about, flexible Waldorf, I understand there's a group called Flexible Waldorf. So, when it comes to being flexible, decide what you're going to be flexible about, because I think that otherwise, if you're going to call yourself a Waldorf homeschooler, decide that, okay, I'm going to keep those things in mind. I'm going to work on age-appropriate material at the right time. And I'm going to stick to that. That's what makes it Waldorf. Those pieces are what makes it Waldorf. The other stuff, the fluff, doesn't make it Waldorf. And when I talk about age-appropriate material at the right time, that means that you're not teaching your 3-year-old how to read. You're not even teaching your 5-year-old how to read. If your 5-year-old learns how to read on their own, then that means they're unfolding, and that is appropriate. That's not something to freak out about. But if they've learned to read on their own, and that means you've not fed them a bunch of, let's talk about letters today and let's talk about sounds of letters. That's teaching them. If you've not fed them that and they've just magically learned to read on their own, which some children just decode it, it's like they were born with it. I understand that. That's unfolding, and that is very much along this child development spectrum, because in first grade, you're generally going to have some kids that are reading, some kids that don't know any letters, some kids that know some letters. So it doesn't matter where you are on that spectrum, all are appropriate. But when it comes to like what's Waldorf Pure, there is no such thing. About 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I was younger in this journey, there was blogging. Everything was about blogging. Now it's about Pinterest and people's Facebook groups, and yeah, there's still some good blogs out there, but it was all about blogging, and you would only see this beautiful keyhole view into what some blogger wanted you to see into their life, and it was all these beautiful pictures of all these children, dressed in beautiful Hannah Anderson dresses, wearing bonnets, and they were painting, and nobody was getting paint everywhere, and your house was perfect. Guess what? That's not reality. And if you haven't figured that one out yet, I hope you figure that one out soon, because that is not reality. Reality is that kids are messy, and this thing is a struggle, and that sometimes, and maybe not struggle, it's not a good word, challenge, and that sometimes things fall apart, and that those snapshots in time are not few and far between if you can cultivate it, but they're also not always the norm. So you have to sort of sort out, what does it look like for you? And that's what helps you sort out in the difference between Waldorf Pure and sort of where you're standing. And like I said, my definition of Waldorf Pure is not going to be somebody else's definition of Waldorf Pure, but my definition is age-appropriate material at the right time. Are you following the Waldorf curriculum layout? Then you're Waldorf Pure. That's where my heart is for you. Doesn't mean you can't go to Disneyland. I was at Disneyland about 10 days ago. We have passes and we go a lot. So it doesn't mean you can't do that. Doesn't mean you can't ever watch a TV show, or, oh no, we watch more than one movie a night as a family a month. Doesn't mean that. Doesn't mean that you can't have any gaming in your house. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean any of that. Doesn't mean they have to have all wooden toys and all great, awesome, amazing furniture. It doesn't mean any of that. That's the fluff part of Waldorf. That's the beautiful part of Waldorf. That's the aesthetically pleasing part of Waldorf. And yes, Steiner said things should be not just functional, but aesthetically pleasing. So look at what you have and see how you can make yourself feel good about that. Don't work on looking and comparing yourself to other people. That's where it's really dangerous. So one last thing that I want to talk about as I'm finishing up here, and if anybody's got any questions, I know we have a lot of viewers today. If you've got any questions, please, or comments, please say something. The last thing I really wanted to talk about is this idea, and I see it in a lot of different places, that people will say, I want a secular Waldorf curriculum. And I go, there is no such thing as a secular Waldorf curriculum. There's just not. You would be taking away the Waldorf parts if you wanted something secular. And I know people will say, oh, well, there's this company that does something secular and this company that... If it's truly Waldorf, it's not secular. But it's also not religious. So Waldorf at its base, so anthroposophy means the study of man, spiritual study of man. So you need to separate do you understand what that means? So that doesn't mean that any Waldorf curriculum should not be pushing religion at you. All of them should be pushing you to inner work. It doesn't matter what that inner work looks like for you. It could mean prayer, it could be meditation, it could be standing out in nature, it could be worshiping the flying spaghetti bowl monster if you want it to be, but none of it is going to push a particular religion, but all of it is going to push you to be spiritual. All of it. Any true Waldorf curriculum is going to push you as a human being to a more spiritual place. Just by the very nature of the curriculum. The very nature of the curriculum itself is an extremely spiritual-based thing. Why? Because Waldorf seeks to teach children how to understand other cultures. And you can't understand other cultures if you don't know what they believe in. Once you know what they believe in, then you can help understand, it helps you understand them. So when you really are looking to make children that are cultivate children that are from this world but not worldly, you need to teach them what other people think. And that means you're teaching them how they view God, or source, or whatever you're calling that. You're teaching them about that relationship, and those relationships and those pieces that you're teaching of the curriculum match the children so beautifully, so beautifully. Like, I'm not a Roman, but man, those sixth graders really, really, really are the epitome of those Roman soldiers in so many ways. I've watched it over and over and over again with my kids, and I thought after having my boys that my daughter would be different. Nope. Nope. So the 12-year-old matches those Roman stories so well. Matches are perfectly ready for that understanding of Islam and the life of Christ. They're totally ready for that. And it's so beautiful to watch that unfold. Okay, so a comment here. Thank you so much for addressing this part. Waldorf is spiritual but not a religion. Yes, ma'am. It allows room for you to bring in your own beliefs. Teaching kids to understand others. I'm going to push this here. It's exactly what we need in this world. Yes, it is exactly what we need in this world. What I find incredibly interesting, and I'm not trying to make anybody mad, but those people that are screaming about tolerance really don't want to be tolerant of people's religion. And so I go, all right, what are you screaming about tolerance for? I'm tolerant of you. You got to be tolerant of me. And so I find that more and more and more that we see so many people that are so, they preach tolerance, but they're really intolerant of other things. They really are intolerant of this idea that their kids should learn about other cultures. To really understand another culture is to understand what they believe. And if you don't understand and take that time, that piece into account for what they believe, then you're not understanding the culture fully. You don't understand what pushes them to do what they do. You don't understand what inspires them, what motivates them. And so to really understand those things, you have to look at all the faiths. You have to. It's just not possible to otherwise. That's why there's such a rich festival life in Waldorf. It is a small way to bring those pieces to the children. Doesn't mean you have to love all of them. Doesn't even mean you have to celebrate all of them. But to know about them is of paramount importance. So again, there is no secular Waldorf curriculum that is truly Waldorf. Now, I'm not making any comment about specific people of specific curriculum, but I'm saying to you, if it is secular and they advertise themselves as secular, it is not a true Steiner Waldorf curriculum. So you really need to be thinking about that. If that piece is important to you, to understand man, to understand cultures, you really have to look at the source material. And I would say you really have to read Steiner. You really have to understand what he was talking about. I know that's a hard one because at the beginning people are like, oh, his words are really hard. It is thick material. But start with something like Kingdom of Childhood. What I tell people is if you can go to rudolphsteineraudio.com, download the audios, listen to the audios as you're reading the pieces. I read a segment, listen to the segment, sleep on it. Review the next day, read the next segment, listen to the next segment, sleep on it. Review everything I've read, read the next segment, listen to the next segment, sleep on it. That really helps you because it is thick material, it is hard, it is new for a lot of people. I've been at this for a lot of years. I still use that. I use that same piece that we teach our children in the bringing the material in, letting them sleep on it, and then review. That same piece I use in all of my study. That's how things stick in your head. And so if you're not doing that sort of review every time before you're bringing in new material, I am encouraging you to do that now because it will really help you when it comes to understanding Waldorf when you're really trying to get deep concepts in. So anyway, that's really what I want to talk about today. Waldorf purity and what it means and what it doesn't mean. And, I know a lot of people have opinions about this topic. I know a lot of people fuss at me. Like I had to block somebody from my Instagram once. I love the internet. To block somebody from my Instagram once because she's a Waldorf teacher and she fussed that we were doing, at our co-op, we were doing painting at the park and we were using plastic bowls. And I said, we're at the park where it says you're not allowed to use glass. That's not what Waldorf is about. It's not about whether or not you use plastic cups or glass cups. It's just not. That is not what it's about. Yes, Waldorf people tend to be more eco-conscious. Just the way it ends up being because we're thinking more about nature. We're thinking more about those other things, but it is not about whether or not you use plastic over glass. It's just not. And if somebody tries to tell you that it is, they're lying. That is, you say to me, I would say, show me where Steiner said that plastic is not okay, that glass has to be it. He is going to definitely say natural materials for sure. But when you're at the park, use plastic or metal. Don't fret. Do not stress about this kind of stuff. Keep it real. Jennifer says, thank you for keeping it real. You're welcome. That's my job. Help you keep it real. Because otherwise, it's this weird, unattainable thing, and you don't want it to be that. Waldorf is beautiful and amazing. And I want you to be able to embrace the pieces that you can, especially like the pieces of the curriculum. And if you're watching and you've, you're brand new and you don't know who we are and you've just been introduced to Waldorf Essentials, that's part of what I do is I teach families how to make this obtainable for them so that it doesn't feel like this giant thing that they can't do. It's not that. It's perfect and amazing and beautiful and messy all at the same time, and I help you learn how to sort that all out. So hope you guys have a great week. I'm intending to have a great week. It's Monday morning here, San Diego. Hopefully the sun will be shining. I hope the sun's shining on you today. Hope you guys have a wonderful week. Bye now.